Do you want an intimate relationship where there's intense passion and deep connection with a loving woman, but you don't think it's possible because of the way modern progressive women are these days? Or maybe you want to be yourself with women and show your real emotions or vulnerability, but you're afraid women will lose attraction for you, and that instead you'd have to resort to being a false you to attract women these days? Or do you believe that all the real-world evidence you've seen over many years is that the modern woman has been ruined by feminism and they can't appreciate a good man anymore? A good man meaning a kind, sincere, upstanding, loyal, hardworking, regular guy. If so, I totally get it. My name's Tian, and as a university professor, then life coach, and now therapist for over the past 15 years, I've been helping hundreds of thousands of men and women from over 87 countries master their emotions and succeed in life and love. I've been featured on national and international media, helping people succeed in their dating lives, their relationships, their lifestyles, and in their psychology. And for the past several years, my team and I have been focused on solving the contemporary crisis raging right now between men and women in relationships and dating. So have you noticed what's been happening between men and women in relationships and dating? More and more men around the world have become disillusioned, depressed, and given up on finding a life partner. The gap between what men offer and what women want has been getting wider and wider. And because many men just don't understand what's really happening right now or how to live up to the expectations of modern women, they give up and they consign themselves to being alone and just try to deal with their loneliness, anger, and resentment. Okay then, so what's really going on here? What's happened is that women across the world, especially in the West, now empowered, turned to men and began insisting on levels of emotional intimacy that most men just weren't prepared for. If you've noticed the same thing, first of all, know that you're not alone, and second, it's not your fault. You see, it all started with the Industrial Revolution, when men left farming and moved into the city to work. Before this, everyone would pitch in together to do the day's work. But with the Industrial Revolution, men began working away from their families while women and children stayed home. And thus, the big roles for men and women in the industrial age were forged. Man as breadwinner and woman as caretaker. Both at home and in school, children were raised to develop character traits that suited these roles. Boys learned to be goal-oriented, competitive, and tough. Girls learned to be caring, nurturing, and cooperative. And for over more than 50 years, this arrangement was largely stable, even if it wasn't rewarding or satisfying to some of the people forced into these roles. But starting in the 70s and moving with accelerating pace, women became the largest addition to the workforce, thanks to the women's movements. Women gained economic independence, political power, a new psychology, and a collective drive to support female freedom and strength. The women's movement changed our world forever. You see, women around the world became empowered by the women's movements and began looking for men who could give them higher levels of emotional connection and intimacy. But most men were raised under a more traditional, old-fashioned masculinity and were not taught the required emotional skills. This is not a criticism of men. It's just pointing out what's happened and what's continuing to happen. This is the great gender divide in emotional skills, emotional awareness, and emotional intelligence that we're living through right now. Let's look more closely at the effects of the women's movements on women in dating and relationships. In the old-fashioned paradigm, the woman was the caretaker, while the feminist paradigm sees her as compliant and repressed. In the modern paradigm, however, the newly empowered woman appears armed and angry, which leaves many men feeling unappreciated and confused. What do they want from us? Men keep asking. Why can't they appreciate us for who we are? From the newly empowered woman's perspective, finding a good man who gets it seems to be more and more difficult. What many old-fashioned men desperately wish, even if unconsciously, is to turn back time. But it's too late. Once the cat's out of the bag, there's no going back. You can't turn back time. And anyone who tells you you can is selling you a lie or has bought into a sad myth. And this is the turn back time myth. It's a waste of your precious life to wait for time to reverse. Instead, the intelligent thing to do is to adapt to the evolving situation. Don't buy into the turn back time myth. Instead, adapt, evolve. You see, the man's job description in relationships changed over the past several decades, but no one bothered to tell us or even send a memo to the men. In the old paradigm, if a man was a reliable provider, an industrious worker, and didn't drink a lot or beat anyone, he was a good husband. He was a good man. Just a generation ago, if a woman went to her mother and complained about a man like that, saying, "He never takes my feelings seriously," or "He puts me down in public," or "He's so shut down, I feel like I live with a stranger," what do you think she would have been told? She would have heard, "Quit your whining, suck it up and go home. You're lucky to have a steady man like that." But now we've outgrown these old-fashioned views, and now it's exactly these emotionally based complaints about the quality of the relationship that break up modern couples, or worse, make a once loving partnership into a chronically miserable life of quiet desperation. As women's roles in society radically changed, so too did their expectations of their intimate partners. While men continued to be satisfied if women kept their traditional caretaker role, most women were now needing their men to be more than mere providers. What the modern woman too often ends up saying to herself and her therapist is, "I don't feel like I have a real partner." A life partner who shares in the details of her personal life or in her concerns about her kids. An intellectual partner who cares about what she thinks and supports her personal development. And most of all, an emotional partner who appreciates and understands her feelings and who can meet her emotionally with his full mental and emotional presence, not just his physical presence. As women joined men as workers, as they stepped beyond the confines of the old-fashioned caretaker roles, they redefined the very rules and expectations of modern dating and relationships. The old breadwinner caretaker paradigm that rose up during the Industrial Revolution crashed and burned at the end of the last century. But most men didn't even realize it and got left behind. And this left a lot of men and women dissatisfied, bitter, and lonely. But you can't turn back time. So, what now? In traditional times, happiness in marriage came from being good life partners. Shoulder to shoulder, husband and wife journeyed through together, facing life's challenges together, raising their kids, paying their taxes, facing war and deprivation, good times and bad, together. It was traditional in the sense that, just as for thousands of years before that, marriage was about an alliance. No one seriously expected marriage to be passionate or thought about long, intimate, exquisite communication. That was the stuff of romance, and romance was for kids and for the honeymoon start of the relationship, before things settled down. But because of the women's movements and the evolution of societal standards, women now want and expect more. Women's new standards take the old stability, the practicalities of building a life together, and adds on to that the new expectations of a lifelong romance, deep talks, exciting adventures, and hot sex. The new modern woman wants to be more than just a companion in alliance with their man. They want to be the best friends and the hottest lovers. In the old paradigm, relationships were about companionship and alliance. But in the new present paradigm, relationships are also about intimacy, physically, sexually, intellectually, and above all, emotionally. As part of women's liberation, women stood up for themselves and owned their sexuality. And while many men might be thrilled to have their girlfriends and wives as sexually provocative and hot in the bedroom as a mistress, the rest of this new evolved package, especially the demands for emotional closeness, often leaves them feeling inadequate and confused, if not outright insulted and looked down upon. So if you're a man who actually cares about women and actually wants love, connection, and intimacy, along with a life companion and partner, then what can you do about this to prepare yourself for success with women? While it isn't all on men to catch up, there's plenty for women to do as well, which I'll get to later. If you're a man, it's time to take responsibility for what you can control and what you can do for yourself and those you care about to evolve and adapt to the new reality. And remember, you're not alone, and it's not your fault. Our schools and society at large have not prepared boys for this new paradigm, and in many ways have been making matters even worse for men. Girls learn emotional intelligence as part of their socialization to become women. For boys, though, there is an ever-widening gap between the old-fashioned ethics of the toxic tough guy and the deeper emotional intelligence required for the new reality and the future. But few schools, communities, or parents are even aware of, let alone preparing their boys to make this transition to the new reality and what's required. Teaching interpersonal communication skills, empathy training, or how to master your emotions. But there is hope. What women have been asking for is men who have also this one crucial ingredient, emotional intelligence. And even better, their dream is for a man who has mastered his emotions. Because what do we all want from a relationship, marriage, or even life? Love, connection, security, being valued, excitement, passion. What are these? They're all emotions. What's required for a successful relationship in the new reality of the modern world is not just companionship, but also a deep, intimate, emotional connection. And creating that, sustaining that, and growing that requires emotional mastery. Hopefully by now, the answer is clear for men, that men improve their skills with emotions, raise their emotional intelligence, and not only meet the needs and expectations of modern women, but even more importantly, learn how to meet their own needs for love, connection, and fulfillment. Now, it's not all on the men. Over the last several decades in consciousness-raising groups, assertiveness trainings, and codependency meetings, women have adopted a new attitude of empowerment, whose message is like, "We were weak, now we're strong. Go screw yourself, men." And as liberated women stormed into men's domains of work and play, many women ended up acting as obnoxiously as the men did. The message of feminine empowerment became, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." This kind of attitude will help get your supporters to climb up on their chairs and shout, "You go, girl!" But while this kind of self-righteous anger might be a step up from disempowerment, it doesn't get you any closer towards a healthy, thriving relationship. And despite all the good they've done, the more radical women's movements have lost steam, precisely because many women understand this. Modern women have lived through the dominance of two relationship strategies, the old-fashioned paradigm and the new self-righteous one. Neither gets you the love you want and need. If the old-fashioned role leaves women silenced and unhappy, but the new empowered role leaves them shrill and unloving, and if doing nothing guarantees that your needs won't be met, then what are we supposed to do? Along with a new understanding of relationships and what's happening, and a new vision for a successful relationship in the modern age, we need a new roadmap showing how to get there and a new set of skills to navigate the journey, to help men become more emotionally available, emotionally intelligent, and emotionally skilled, while helping women become less resentful and more effective in their relationships. And that's what this new series is all about. Over the next few videos, I'll show you the destination and how men and women can be happy and fulfilled in the new paradigm, the bigger roadmap for how to get there, and the exact steps to take along the way. I'll share with you how other people were able to evolve in the new paradigm and create, sustain, and grow happy, successful, lasting relationships of both companionship and intimacy. In the next video, I'll reveal the first and arguably the most important emotional mastery skill, and even walk you through a gentle, enjoyable process for experiencing it yourself. Now, comment below and let me know if any of this resonated with you. I'd love to hear from you. I'll read every comment and respond to as many as I can. See you in the next video.